Little alien girl tried to sell her hair for medicine to save her brother, but a human doctor saw her tears. The lower tiers of Illustra 9 always smelled the same: rust, chemical steam, and wet metal. The air never quite cleared. It clung to the skin and burned the throat when you breathed too deep. Somewhere above the noise of leaking valves and recycling vents, the corporate city still glowed bright and sterile. But here, light came from old bulbs that buzzed and flickered like they were ready to die. Savy stood at the edge of a narrow corridor where coolant dripped from the ceiling into a metal bucket. She was 7, too small for her torn clothes, and her violet-tinted skin looked gray under the flickering light. Her yellow hair was long and tangled, uneven where she'd already cut some away. The piece she'd sliced off lay bundled in her palm, still warm from her skin. Her fingers ached from holding it too tight. Across from her, a vendor sat behind a cracked synth glass counter, counting credits on an old display pad. His work jacket was clean, his eyes empty. Behind him hung rows of labeled vials: antiseptics, pain inhibitors, biogel, things that could save a life if you had the money. A small sign read, "No trades below 5 credits." Savy tried to sound calm. "Please, I need 1 vial of Draxon Blue. My brother can't breathe." The man didn't even look up at first. When he did, it was with the tired glance of someone used to saying no. "That serum costs 28 credits, he said flatly. "Your hair's worth 2, maybe 3. "I can bring more," she said quickly, cutting another piece from the back of her head with a broken scalpel shard. It slipped, nicking her finger. She flinched and pressed it to her mouth, tasting copper. "I'll come back with more tomorrow." The man leaned back. "You'll just come back bald and still broke. Move along, kid." Her chest tightened. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. She stared down at the hair in her hand, breathing fast through her nose. Her heart hammered against her ribs so hard it hurt. She wanted to scream, but the sound stuck in her throat. She turned away before he could see her face. The walkway behind a vendor's stall opened into a larger market square, or what passed for one in the lower sectors. Flickering hollow ads clung to the walls like fading stickers. Steam vents hissed. People passed her without slowing. Tech salvagers in stained coveralls, food vendors shouting for buyers, a woman washing metal bowls in a bucket of gray water. No one looked twice at the crying alien child carrying her own hair. From across the square, Otis saw her. He was on his way to the waste exchange point, a steel case of medical samples under his arm. The white stripes on his coat had dulled to beige from years of use, but the creases were sharp, the pockets organized with surgical precision. He had been a trauma doctor once, Upper Ward, Sector 3, until the board decided compassion was inefficient. Now he worked the lower levels, collecting discarded medical cartridges for reprocessing, patching up whoever could find his door. He stopped walking, his eyes fixed on the small figure near the merchant's stall, a child, trembling, holding a lock of her own hair like an offering. The merchant waved her off with the same casual motion he used to shoo away rats. Otis's jaw tightened. He exhaled slowly through his nose and crossed the square, his boots splashing through a puddle of rainwater and coolant. Savy didn't notice him until his shadow fell across the ground beside her. She stepped back fast, eyes wide. "Where's your brother?" he asked. His voice was low, calm, controlled. She looked up. Humans didn't stop here. They didn't kneel. They didn't ask questions. But this one did. He crouched to her level, resting his metal case beside him. His face was lined from years of long shifts, hard angles, dark hair with a few gray strands at the temples. The eyes were the difference, steady, clear, not disgusted or afraid. She hesitated. "You're a doctor?" "Used to be," he said, still no enough. Her hand trembled as she pointed down a narrow side corridor. "He's there, in the pipes. I didn't know where else to take him." "Show me," Otis said. She stared for a heartbeat, testing whether he meant it. Then she nodded and started walking. He followed close behind, case in one hand, his other ready to steady her when the floor turned slick. The corridor narrowed until they had to crouch. The sound of dripping water grew louder. The air stung, heavy with chemical residue for broken vents. They passed rusted panels and flickering repair drones that hadn't moved in years. Finally, Savy stopped at a small hatch door wedged halfway open. She slipped through first, crawling on hands and knees. Otis followed. Inside was a forgotten hydro shed, once part of the water recycling grid. The air was humid and faintly toxic. A leaking pipe hissed above a pile of insulation sheets. On one of them lay a baby, barely a year old, violet-skinned and limp, his small chest rising in short, shallow gasps. His eyes fluttered under his lids. Otis knelt beside him immediately, pressing 2 fingers gently to the child's neck. Weak pulse. He lifted the boy's eyelid, saw the dull glaze, then looked up at the vent above them. "You've been sleeping under that?" he asked. Savy nodded quickly. "It's warm here. Everywhere else is cold." "That's solvent gas," he said. "It's killing him." Her face fell. "I didn't know." "I know you didn't," he said. His tone stayed even, but his movements sharpened. He set his case on the floor, opened it, and pulled out a small injector and a half-filled vial marked Frolen Seed Plasma. It was the only one he had left. He worked fast, wiped the injector, checked the dosage, primed it. His hands were steady. "Hold him still." Savy knelt close, wrapping her arms around her brother's tiny body. Her knees pressed into the wet floor. "Will it hurt?" "Yes," Otis said, "but it'll save him." The injector clicked against the baby's skin. The hiss of release filled the air. Talon jerked, then coughed weakly, a raw, wet sound that made Savy flinch. She almost dropped him, but Otis steadied her with a hand on her shoulder. A second later, the baby inhaled sharply, then again, slower, deeper. His skin color shifted from pale gray to soft lilac. His fingers twitched. Savy stared. "He's breathing," she said in a whisper, then louder, "He's breathing." Otis's expression softened, the tension in his jaw easing. "He'll sleep now. Keep him warm, and keep that vent sealed." She looked at him as if trying to understand what just happened. Her whole body shook from relief. You're really helping us? You don't want payment." He closed the case. "I'm not here for that." Her throat tightened again, but for a different reason. "No one helps us," she said quietly. "They say we're waste." "I don't care what they say," Otis replied. "I'll bring food and medicine tomorrow." She blinked at him, unsure if she'd heard right. "You'll come back." "I said I would." He stood, brushing the dust from his coat. "What's your name?" "Savy." He nodded once. "I'm Otis. Keep your brother close tonight." When he climbed out of the hatch, Savy followed him with her eyes until he disappeared into the shadows of the corridor. The sound of his boots faded, replaced by the constant drip of water. Her hands were still shaking, but she managed a small smile as she looked down at her brother. His breathing was slow, and even now, outside, Otis walked back through the market toward his small clinic 3 blocks away. The lights above flickered blue across the wet steel walkway. He moved with quiet purpose, his mind already turning over supply lists and dosage calculations. He would need more plasma, more filters, and a way to make sure the children didn't end up under that vent again. He had come to the lower tiers to collect discarded medical waste, a quiet job that kept him away from the politics of the upper wards. But tonight reminded him why he still carried his satchel instead of locking it away. He told himself it was just instinct, nothing more. Yet as he reached the stairwell and looked back once toward the direction of the corridor, he realized something had changed. He had found a reason to come back. The rain outside the lower colony hadn't stopped for 2 days. It poured against the glass veins of Lystra 9, ran through the gutter pipes, and disappeared into the dark filtration grids below. Down here, sound carried differently, dampened, heavier, like the world above had forgotten there were still people breathing underneath it. Otis climbed the narrow service stairwell with a thermosealed bag pressed against his chest. Inside were a folded blanket, 2 small ration packs, and a second dose of plasma, his last until the next supply drop. His boots left muddy streaks on the graded steps. He'd spent half the night restocking shelves in his small clinic, replaying the image of the girl in his head. Hair uneven, eyes hollow but stubborn. He didn't like that she'd gotten under his skin so fast. He'd treated hundreds of children in his time as a doctor, but something about this one, her silence, her refusal to beg again after the first rejection, stuck. He told himself it was just guilt, that anyone would have done the same if they'd seen what he had. That was a lie. Most people had seen worse and done nothing. When he reached the rusted hatch, he crouched and tapped twice on the metal. "It's me," he said. There was a pause, then a scraping sound as Savy pushed it open from the inside. She looked cleaner than before, barely, but he noticed she'd tried. Her hair was tied with a thin piece of wiring, her face wiped down with water that smelled faintly of coolant. "You came back," she said, voice small but less afraid. "I said I would," he replied. He stepped through and glanced around. The shed looked the same. Wet floor, cracked pipe, stale air, but she'd moved things. The insulation sheets were stacked to form a barrier against the vent. The baby, Talon, lay wrapped in fabric from what used to be her shawl, breathing quietly. Otis set the bag down and unsealed it. The hiss of pressure release made her flinch. He noticed, slowed his movement. "It's just air release," he said. She nodded quickly. "I brought food," he added, taking out a ration pack and opening it. The smell of processed meat and salt filled the air. He handed her one of the packs and a folded metal spoon. Savy sniffed it carefully. "What is it?" "Kareth meat paste. Not fresh, but better than nothing." Her stomach tightened at the smell. Foreign, rich, too much, but hunger won. She scooped a spoonful and hesitated before swallowing. The taste burned slightly, but warmth spread through her body. "Eat slower," Otis said, unpacking a smaller container for the baby. "He can't handle solids." "I made a thin broth, varan root, and bone stock." "You cooked?" she asked, surprised. He gave her a short look. "Doctors eat too." That drew a small, reluctant smile. He filled a small dropper and fed the infant carefully, checking each swallow. The baby's color had improved since yesterday, more lilac than pale gray, but the breathing still caught every few minutes. He adjusted the cradle fabric to raise the head slightly. Savy watched every movement. "You don't use gloves," she said suddenly. "I wash my hands," he replied without looking up. "Gloves aren't a replacement for care." That made her blink. "They used to wear gloves up there," she murmured, tilting her head upward, meaning the higher levels. "I used to wear them too," Otis said. He sealed the dropper. "Until I learned they're more about keeping your own hands clean than saving anyone else." He said it without bitterness, just fact. But Savy noticed how his jaw tightened afterward. "Why did you leave?" she asked quietly. Otis hesitated, then sat back on his heels. "They told me who I could and couldn't treat. I stopped listening. They stopped paying. That's the short version." Savy nodded, absorbing it. "So you came here." "I came where people don't have anyone else," he said. He glanced at the vent, its leak patched with the cloth she'd used. "How long have you been living here?" "Since the storm," she said. 2 months. Our block collapsed. I don't remember the crash. Just the sound. "Your parents?" "Gone," she said. No tremor in her voice, no hesitation. Just the dull calm of someone who'd had to say it too many times in her head already. Otis looked down at her hands. Thin, cracked, small cuts across the knuckles. The kind of marks that didn't come from play, but from carrying, scrubbing, surviving. He took a small bottle from the bag, poured clear liquid over her palms. She hissed at the sting. "It's antiseptic," he said. "You got open cuts." "They'll close," she muttered. "They'll get infected first," he replied, drying her hands with a clean gauze strip. "Don't argue." Her eyes flicked up, studying him. No one spoke to her like that, like she mattered enough to be corrected. When he finished, she flexed her fingers and frowned. "You sound like my father used to." "Good man?" Otis asked. "He worked," she said simply. "He didn't talk much." Otis gave a faint grunt that might have been a laugh. "I can respect that." For a while, neither spoke. The only sound came from the soft hum of pipes and the occasional drip of condensation. Savy sat beside her brother, watching him breathe. Otis took slow notes on a small data pad, the glow reflecting off his face. After a few minutes, she asked, "Will he get better?" "He will," Otis said, "but not here." She frowned. "Where else can we go?" He looked up, meeting her eyes. "My clinic. It's safer. Clean air. Real filters." Her first instinct was to shake her head. "They'll see us. They'll know we're not registered." "They won't," Otis said. "I still have access to blank IDs." I can add temporary tags. You'll stay inside. No one checks down there unless someone gives them a reason. She hesitated. Her hands tightened in her lap. Why are you helping us? He zipped the bag closed. Because someone should have helped you before I showed up. That's reason enough. She wanted to believe him. Part of her already did, which scared her more than anything else. When he stood, she followed him to the hatch. He crouched to meet her gaze again, the same calm look as before. You'll need to carry him, he said. Wrap him close to your chest. Keep his face turned away from the light when we pass through the corridors. Will we get caught? If we do, keep walking, he said. Let me talk. Savy nodded, swallowing hard. She lifted Talon, pressing him against her shoulder. His tiny hand brushed her jaw, and for a second she forgot the cold. Otis placed a hand on her back, firm and steady. You're doing fine, he said quietly. It was the first kind thing anyone had said to her in months. They slipped into the corridor together. The noise of the colony surrounded them. The whir of ventilation fans, the murmur of distant voices, the metallic pulse of power lines running overhead. Otis led, his tall frame cutting through the fog and steam. Savy followed, clutching the baby tight under a shawl. Each step toward his clinic felt heavier, but also warmer. She didn't realize until they reached the junction that she'd stopped shaking. The clinic sat on the edge of the lower district, built from two connected cargo units, welded into a single structure. Its walls were lined with panels scavenged from old med bays, the floor patched with metal sheets that clanked under heavy boots. It wasn't much, but the air was filtered and the power lines were stable. The steady hum of the air scrubbers filled the silence, blending with the low rhythm of rain against the steel roof. Otis pushed the door open with his shoulder, motioning Savy inside. She stepped hesitantly, eyes scanning every detail. The flicker of yellow light strips, the faint scent of disinfectant mixed with something warmer, maybe roasted meat. The space looked nothing like the lower corridors. It was too clean, too ordered. Talon stirred under the fabric sling on her chest, soft whimpers breaking from his throat. She rocked him gently, murmuring without sound. Otis set his satchel on a counter beside a sink and peeled off his gloves. Lay him here, he said, tapping the padded cot near the far wall. She hesitated again, glancing at the cot, then at him. It's clean, as clean as anywhere in this sector gets. He lifted a small lamp, adjusted the beam. You can stay with him. I just need to check his breathing again. Savy placed the baby down carefully. Her fingers lingered on his tiny chest, waiting for the slow rise and fall. She didn't step back until Otis's calm nod told her to. He worked in silence, checking pulse, temperature, eyes. His movements were precise, but his face softened when the boy stirred and coughed weakly. He prepared a second dose from a different vial, this one labeled Larn Leaf Extract, and filled a small injector. He's strong, Otis said. If he wasn't, he wouldn't have lasted through that gas leak. Savy looked up. Will he need more medicine? Yes, but small doses. His lungs need to clear gradually. She watched every motion of his hands, absorbing how he handled each tool as if they were extensions of his body. You don't talk much, she said quietly. Talking wastes breath, he replied without looking up. That made her smile for the first time, a faint, uncertain thing that passed too fast. After a few minutes, the baby's breathing settled. Otis turned off the lamp and stepped back. He's stable. He needs rest and food. You both do. Savy's stomach made a low, embarrassing sound right then. She froze, then lowered her head, cheeks darkening. Otis pretended not to notice, but he moved toward a metal crate near the stove. He opened a small heating unit and took out a pot that smelled faintly of seared meat and broth. The scent filled the small room instantly. Sit, he said, pulling two metal bowls from a shelf. This isn't ration paste. I cooked. What is it? She asked cautiously. Dried carrot meat and root stew, he said, ladling it out. It's better hot. She sat on a low stool by the counter, hands close to the pot as if afraid to touch. When he passed her a bowl, she waited a beat before taking it. The warmth spread into her palms through the thin metal. She dipped a spoon in, tasted carefully, then took another bite faster. Otis leaned against the wall, watching her eat with the kind of quiet relief that didn't show in his voice. "You haven't had real food in a while," he said. She nodded, swallowing. "We used to trade for scraps. Powdered soup sometimes. Not this. Scraps don't keep a child alive." She looked down. "We tried. After the storm, no one wanted us. They said alien lungs couldn't survive long in the lower vents. Maybe they were right." "They weren't," Otis said. His tone left no room for argument. When she finished eating, she placed the empty bowl beside her knee and wiped her mouth with her sleeve. He handed her a small towel from the counter without comment. She took it, hesitated again, then whispered, "Thank you." "Keep it," he said. "You'll need more than one clean cloth in this place." While she cleaned her hands, he glanced toward the corner where the baby slept. "What's his name?" "Talon," she said. "It means light in our tongue." Otis nodded. "Good name. Do you have one?" she asked after a pause. He raised an eyebrow. "A name. A meaning," she said. "What does Otis mean?" He smirked faintly, half to himself. "Never checked. Probably something old and dull. Doesn't matter much." She looked at him for a long moment, head tilted, as if trying to figure out whether he meant it. Then she said quietly, "It sounds strong." The compliment hung in the air longer than it should have. Otis cleared his throat and turned back to the stove. "You can sleep here tonight. There's a cot near the window. The shutters don't open, so don't bother trying." Savy tensed. "You're letting us stay?" "Until he's better," he said simply. "You'll get in trouble," she warned. "Already am," he said with a tired half-smile. He gathered the used bowls, rinsed them quickly, then poured 2 small cups of something dark and steaming. "Ferland seed coffee," he said, offering her one. "Don't drink too fast. It's bitter." She sniffed it, wrinkling her nose. "Smells burnt." "It's supposed to," he said, sipping his. Her fingers wrapped around the cup carefully. She took a small sip and blinked hard. "Tastes like dirt." "Good dirt," he said, amused. I got a quiet laugh from her, soft but real. It was the first sound that didn't carry fear since he'd met her. When she finally laid down on the cot with Talon curled at her side, Otis turned off the brighter lights, leaving only the dim orange strip near the door. He sat at his desk, reviewing a set of supply notes, but his mind drifted. He'd left the upper districts to escape bureaucracy, to stop seeing people as numbers. Down here, he could work quietly, heal who he wanted, answer to no one. Yet the sight of that little girl cutting her own hair for medicine had reminded him why he started in the first place. He'd told himself this was temporary, just another case, but deep down he knew he'd already decided something. Behind him, Savy's breathing slowed into steady rhythm. Otis exhaled, rubbing his eyes. He reached for his old badge, worn metal, corners chipped, and set it beside the small vial that now held a lock of her yellow hair. It caught the low light, glowing faintly. He didn't know why he kept it, only that he couldn't throw it away. He turned the badge face down and whispered to himself, almost absently, "Tomorrow, she and the boy get real papers." It wasn't a promise to her. It was a decision. The next morning came with the sound of water striking metal. Rain poured steadily across the upper platforms, drumming faint echoes down to the lower sectors. The clinic lights flicked on automatically at 0600, pale yellow against the steel walls. Otis was already awake, sitting at his desk, typing quietly into an old registry terminal. Savy stirred on the cot beside the wall, her yellow hair a messy halo across the pillow. For a second, she forgot where she was. Then she saw the light, the clean floor, the steady hum of the filters. The air didn't sting her throat. She sat up, clutching her brother against her chest. Talon's breathing was soft and regular now. No wheezing. Otis turned his chair slightly. "He slept through the night," he said. She blinked sleep from her eyes. "You stayed awake?" "Didn't have to," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "But I checked on him every hour anyway." He stood, poured water into 2 tin cups, and pushed one across the counter toward her. The water was clear, faintly warm. She took it like it was something rare. "Where did you get clean water?" she asked. "I built a filter line," Otis said, adjusting a valve near the sink. "Runs off condensed rainwater and carbon mesh. Took 2 months to make it not taste like rust." She smiled faintly. "You made all this yourself?" "Mostly. You fix what you need, or it stops working. Her gaze wandered around the small clinic. Metal cabinets labeled by hand, the patched flooring, the old heater humming in the corner. Everything looked worn but cared for. He'd built his world from leftovers. Talon coughed softly, half asleep. She rocked him gently. "He's getting hungry," she said. Otis nodded toward the stove. "You can heat the root mash in that pan. Don't touch the big switch. Top coil's unstable." Savy hesitated, then stood, adjusting the oversized shirt he'd lent her the night before. It reached her knees and smelled faintly of detergent and steel. She folded the sleeves twice, tied the waist with a strip of cloth. The shirt made her look like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. As she prepared the meal, Otis watched from the desk, reading through medical logs. He tried not to stare, but he found himself studying how deliberate she was, how she checked the pot 3 times before lighting the stove, how she blew on the spoon before testing it. She wasn't used to having enough food to waste a bite. When she turned, he was already holding a small cup of Larn root tea for her. "Drink this too. It's mild, keeps you steady." She accepted it, the steam warming her face. "You keep saying steady," she said, "like that's more important than being safe." "It is," he said. "Safety can vanish. Steadiness doesn't." Her expression softened. "You sound like my mother. You said she was gone." "She is, but she used to say that when I'd panic over small things." She paused, stirring the pot again. She said fear makes your hands clumsy. I think she was right. Otis didn't answer. The smell of the mash filled the room, earthy and faintly sweet like boiled root and salt. He watched the rain streaking down the reinforced window. The colony lights above flickered through the downpour, bright against the endless dark. When they sat to eat, Savy fed Talon first, dipping a cloth into the warm mash and letting him suck the moisture out. The baby's color had returned completely, his cheeks faintly glowing violet in the light. "He's stronger," Otis said, quietly satisfied. "You sound surprised," she teased lightly. "I'm not," he said, just reminded what small lungs can do when they're given a chance. She looked up from the child. "Why do you stay here? In the lower levels?" She nodded. "You could go back up. You talk like someone who belongs there." Otis leaned back in his chair, running a thumb over his metal ID tag on the desk. "Belonging's overrated. Up there, I spent more time writing reports than fixing people. Down here, no one cares what you were, only what you can do." "You still keep the badge," she said. He looked down at it. "Habit, or proof," she said softly. He didn't reply. Outside, the rain slowed. The air turned thick and warm. Steam from the cooking pan condensed on the glass. Savy wiped it with her sleeve, revealing a narrow view of the dripping walkways outside. A few people passed, scavengers, workers, a street sweeper pushing a broken drone. None of them looked toward the clinic. She caught her reflection faintly in the window. Violet skin against the white shirt. Yellow hair sticking in uneven strands. "I look strange," she murmured. "You look alive," Otis said. Her shoulders stiffened at that, unsure how to take it. "That's not much to look at. It's more than most have here." She sat down opposite him, the chair too tall for her, feet barely touching the ground. "You talk like you don't expect this place to change." "I don't," he said. "I just expect to outlast it." Savy smiled faintly again, shaking her head. "You sound like someone who's already tried to fix it once." "I did," Otis said, "and I learned it doesn't want fixing. You just build something small inside it that still works." He gestured toward the cot, the food, the child. Her gaze lingered on him, thoughtful, then on the badge still lying beside the vial of her cut hair. "You kept that?" she asked. He shrugged. "Remind me of something." "What?" "That some fights are worth losing once if it means you learn how to win the next one differently." She didn't fully understand, but she saw the quiet conviction behind his eyes, the same calm that made her trust him from the first moment. Later, when Talon was asleep and the room dimmed to evening light, Savy folded the thin blanket across her lap. "Can I help here?" she asked suddenly. "Clean, cook, something." "You don't owe me work," Otis said. "I'm not paying a debt," she replied. "I just need to do something. I can't sit and wait to be grateful." He considered that for a moment, then nodded once. "Start with the shelves. You'll need gloves." She found the old pair hanging near the sink, too large, with small holes at the fingers, and began sorting the supply boxes. He watched quietly as she organized them with surprising care, aligning labels, wiping lids. Her small movements filled the silence, grounding the room in something that felt normal. When she finished, she looked up at him expectantly. "What next?" He handed her a small wrench. "Tighten the bolts on that vent plate before it rattles itself loose." She frowned at the tool, confused, then copied his grip. When she managed it, her lips curved slightly. "You'll have to teach me the rest." "I will," he said, step by step. She returned to work, and he turned back to his notes, pretending not to notice the faint hum she made under her breath while she worked. For the first time since the colony's storms began, the clinic didn't sound empty. Outside, the rain stopped completely. Only the slow drip from the roof remained, steady and rhythmic, like a pulse the world had forgotten it still had. By the fourth morning, the routine had already begun to form. Otis woke before dawn, checked the air filter levels, and boiled water for tea while reviewing patient log from the last shift. The sound of faint breathing came from the cot near the window. Savy curled on her side, one arm over her brother, her long yellow hair spilling across the pillow like spilled sunlight against the dull gray of the sheets. He watched for a moment before turning away, pretending he hadn't. She had a quiet way of existing, like she was afraid any sound she made might cost her safety. But when she slept, she looked normal, just a child who'd carried too much. By the time she stirred awake, Otis was already setting a plate on the counter. Thick slices of reheated carrot meat, roasted in grease until the edges curled, with a small cup of varan root mash beside it. The smell filled the small room. She sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes. "You cook like a real place does," she said groggily. "I worked in a real place once," he said, handing her a fork. "You still talk like someone who hasn't forgotten it." He didn't respond, just sipped his Frolen seed coffee and looked out the window. Steam fogged the glass. Outside, the walkways gleamed with moisture, reflecting the sharp light of early morning. He knew that soon the workers would start coming by again, people with burns, cuts, or infections no one else wanted to treat. "You get a lot of visitors?" she asked, cutting the meat into tiny pieces for Talon. "Enough," Otis said. "Most pay in whatever they have. Food, wire, old filters. I don't keep accounts." "Then why do they come?" He looked over. "Because I don't turn them away." Savy nodded quietly. "That's rare." Otis studied her. She was wearing the same oversized shirt, sleeves rolled again, the fabric cinched at the waist with a cable tie. Her skin looked cleaner now, glowing faintly lilac under the warm lights. The hollow exhaustion in her face had softened. Talon gurgled on her lap, mouth messy with mash. She laughed under her breath, wiping him with a corner of her sleeve. The sound drew Otis's eyes for a second longer than he meant. "What?" she asked. "Nothing," he said, turning back to his cup. "You just sound different today." "Different how?" "Alive." She tilted her head, unsure if it was a compliment or not. "You keep saying that word. It matters down here." She fed Talon another spoonful, her expression thoughtful. "Maybe," she murmured, "but it's not enough." He looked up from his coffee. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Being alive isn't the same as living. My parents were alive until the collapse. But every day before that, they were just surviving. I don't want to end up like that again." Otis set his cup down. "You won't. You can't promise that," she said. "I can make it likely." His tone was steady, almost detached, but the certainty in it made her chest tighten. That morning, the first patient came in early, a dock worker with a chemical rash creeping up his arm. Otis pulled on gloves, guided him to the chair, and began cleaning the burn. Savy stayed by the corner, watching. He noticed her watching every small step, how he sterilized the tools, how he talked to the man calmly while working, how he didn't flinch when the patient groaned. When he handed her a cloth to wipe down the counter afterward, she took it immediately. "Want to learn?" he asked. "Yes," she said before thinking. He nodded once, satisfied. "Then start by cleaning the instruments after I'm done. The small ones first. You'll ruin the edges if you rush." She worked slowly but with care. By midday, she'd memorized which tray each tool belonged to. Talon slept nearby, wrapped in a blanket Otis had given her. When the clinic grew quiet again, Otis poured 2 cups of tea and leaned against the counter. "You're learning fast," he said. "I used to watch the medics in our old block," she said, focused on drying the instruments. "They never let us near, so we'd break things. People learn faster when they're trusted," he said. She looked up briefly, searching his face for mockery. There was none, only a simple statement of truth. He took a sip of his tea. "If you're going to stay here, you'll help me properly. Not just cleaning. I'll teach you how to prep the treatments." Her hand stilled on the towel. "Stay here? You think I brought you here to send you back under a pipe?" She stared at him, unsure how to answer. He saw the disbelief in her eyes. "I'm not going to throw you out, Savvy," he said. "You and the boy. This is your home now if you want it." Her lips parted, but no sound came. The word home caught her off guard, heavy and unfamiliar. She looked down, blinking fast. "I don't know what to say." "Then don't," he said quietly. "Just keep working." Hours passed. Rain faded into a steady trickle. Otis treated a few more patients, a boy with a deep cut, a woman coughing blood from air contamination. Savvy fetched towels, mixed antiseptic, followed instructions without question. By evening, the clinic lights dimmed to amber. The last patient left a small bag of dried herbs as payment. Savvy turned the key in the door, sealing it shut. She stood there a moment, looking out at the glowing street, the soft shimmer of rain sliding down the metal walls. "No one ever knocks twice," she said. "They're afraid of being seen," Otis replied. "But they'll come back. Fear doesn't last when pain starts again." Savvy turned, leaning against the doorframe. "You act like you've seen this before." "I have." She studied him quietly. "You don't talk about the upper city much. What happened there?" He hesitated, then spoke in the same calm tone he used for diagnoses. "They said I treated too many people who couldn't pay. Called it misuse of resources. I called it medicine. They revoked my license and sent me down here to rethink my ethics." "I didn't." Her jaw tightened. "You saved lives, and they punished you for it." "They punished the idea that life should be free," he corrected. The air between them went still. She didn't look away. "Then they're fools," she said. He gave a faint smirk. "That's generous." For the first time since she'd arrived, she felt safe enough to laugh softly. It wasn't loud, but changed the room's air, made it warmer somehow. When Talon started crying in his sleep, she knelt to comfort him, rocking gently. Otis crouched nearby, passing her a clean cloth. Their hands brushed. For a brief second, both froze, the contact small but grounding. "Sorry," she murmured. "Don't be," he said. When Talon quieted again, she looked up. "You keep helping people who can't help you back. Doesn't that wear you down?" Otis leaned back on his heels. "It used to. Not anymore." "Why not?" He thought for a moment, eyes on the sleeping baby. "Because now I remember why I started. And because some people," his gaze flicked to her, "make it worth doing again." Savvy lowered her head, pretending to focus on the child, but the small flush rising to her cheeks betrayed her. He stood, grabbing his coat. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we fix the vent filters. I'll need your hands steady." She nodded. "I can do that." "I know," he said, when he turned off the lights. The clinic went quiet again, except for the faint hum of the air scrubbers. Savvy lay back on the cot, her thoughts too full to rest. For the first time, the silence didn't scare her. It felt like belonging. Morning came without warning. No sunrise in the lower sectors, only the slow brightening of the artificial lights overhead. Otis was already up, tightening a clamp on the main air vent. The hiss of filtered air filled the room, mixing with the faint hum of the heater. Savvy sat cross-legged near the cot, feeding Talon from a small tin bowl. The baby's eyes had started to follow movement now, alert and bright. She smiled faintly when he reached for her finger, then looked toward Otis. "You don't sleep much," she said quietly. "Enough," he replied, not looking up from the wrench. She tilted her head. "You said that yesterday." He adjusted the bolt one last time, then exhaled through his nose. And it was true yesterday. He dropped the tool into a tray. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing the long scar that crossed his forearm. She noticed it for the first time. What happened there? He looked down, as if he'd forgotten it was visible. Accident, he said simply. Old case. Didn't heal right. Does it hurt? Only when I think about it. She didn't ask more. Something in his tone made her leave it alone. He washed his hands at the sink, the sound of running water sharp in the quiet. Finish eating and put your boots on, he said. We're checking the upper filters. The roof. Access walkway. It's not far, but I can't leave you two alone here. If the vent overpressures while I'm gone, it'll flood the room. Savy nodded. Then I'll come. Otis gathered a small toolkit and slung it over his shoulder. He hesitated before adding, stay close. No talking to anyone. She smirked faintly. You think someone's going to stop me for being short? Down here, they stop you for breathing wrong, he said. Keep your hood up. Outside, the air was thicker. The walkway stretched in both directions, lined with dripping pipes and electrical conduits that flickered faintly blue. The floor panels clanged under their boots. Savy held Talon close under her shawl, her other hand gripping the railing as they climbed the graded stairs. Otis walked ahead, steady and silent, his coat moving in rhythm with each step. He stopped beside a large ventilation duct, its seal blinking orange. Pressure imbalance, he muttered. Probably corrosion again. He crouched, pried open the access panel, and began working. Savy knelt beside him, peeking into the maze of pipes. You really built all this? Rebuilt it, he corrected. The system existed long before me. I just kept it from killing people. She smiled faintly, running her fingers along the cool metal. You talk like someone who doesn't trust machines. I trust what I can fix, he said, tightening a bolt. Everything else needs watching. Her eyes moved over his hands, strong, precise, methodical. He never wasted emotion. The way he worked reminded her of the medics she'd seen before, only without the cold detachment. He caught her staring and raised an eyebrow. What? Nothing, she said, but the heat rose in her cheeks. He sealed the panel with a click and stood. That's one down. He gestured toward the edge of the walkway. There's another valve behind that barrier. Keep your head low. They crossed through a narrow gap where steam leaked from a cracked joint. The air shimmered with warmth. Savy squinted against it, the humidity clinging to her skin. Feels like the inside of a vent's stomach, she muttered. Good analogy, Otis said dryly, and less poisonous than the real thing. By the time they finished the second repair, both were sweating. Otis stripped his gloves and wiped his forehead with the back of his hand. Savy adjusted the fabric around Talon, who had fallen asleep against her chest. How long before it breaks again? She asked. Depends who tampers with it, he said. Someone tampers on purpose? Sometimes. Some sectors reroute flow illegally to keep heat during the storms. Her brow furrowed. Then why not fix the whole system? Otis gave her a look, the kind that said she was too young to know how the colony worked, and too smart not to ask. Because the people who control it don't live where it leaks, he said. She fell silent, absorbing the answer. When they returned to the clinic, Savy helped him hang the wet coats by the heater. She rolled up her sleeves automatically, wiping the condensation off the counter. You were right about the pressure. The air smells different already. Otis handed her a clean cloth. That's not smell, he said. That's oxygen content increasing. You can feel it. I can feel it, she repeated, smiling. You talk like you teach for a living. I did once. She turned sharply. You taught. New med recruits. Before they decided compassion was inefficiency. Her expression hardened. Then they didn't deserve you. Otis froze at that. No one had said anything like that to him in years. He didn't respond, just reached for a canister on the shelf. Drink this. You'll need salt after working in that heat. She took the cup, sniffed it, then sipped cautiously. Tastes awful. Then it's working. They both laughed quietly. The sound filled the small space in a way that made it feel less like survival and more like living. Later, while Otis cleaned his tools, Savy sat by the window, holding Talon against her chest. The child slept peacefully, small fingers clutching her collar. She looked out at the dark walkways beyond the glass and asked softly, Do people ever come here just to talk? No, Otis said without looking up. They come because something hurts. Doesn't that ever get heavy? He paused, then said, It used to. Now it just reminds me I'm still useful. She turned toward him. That's enough for you? For now. Her gaze lingered on him. How still he stood, how precise every movement was. There was strength in his quietness, something she couldn't name but felt deeply. When he noticed her staring again, his voice softened. "What are you thinking about?" She hesitated. That maybe it's not the world that decides who belongs here. Maybe it's just the people who stay. He studied her for a long moment. That's a good way to put it. Their eyes met briefly, and in that silence, something unspoken passed between them. Understanding, fragile but real. He didn't break the gaze until the heater clicked off, throwing a deeper quiet over the room. "Get some rest," he said, voice low. "We'll start inventory at first light." She nodded, standing slowly. "Otis." "Yeah." She looked at him, the words catching in her throat. "Thank you for not treating us like a burden." He shook his head. "You make this place lighter." Her lips parted slightly, but she didn't answer. She turned instead, walking to the cot, the sound of her bare feet soft against the floor. When she lay down, Otis watched her for a moment, then returned to his desk. He tried to focus on his notes, but the sound of her breathing behind him, steady, calm, made it hard to remember why he'd spent so long alone. Outside, the lights dimmed across the sector. The colony's endless hum carried on, indifferent to the two lives now beginning to belong inside its forgotten walls. The next cycle brought heavy heat, one of those rare, oppressive days when the lower sectors felt like the inside of a sealed machine. The fans pushed sluggish air through the vents, and the hum of the filters turned rough from strain. Sweat collected on the back of Otis's neck as he wiped the condensation from the clinic's interior windows. The lights flickered twice before stabilizing. Savy sat near the open service door, a damp cloth over her shoulders. She was sorting clean bandages into a tray, her movements steady but slower than usual. Talon was asleep in a cradle beside her, small chest rising evenly. "You should sit by the vent," Otis said. "I don't like the sound it makes," she replied, her voice quiet but firm. He half smiled. "That sound is the only thing keeping us from suffocating." She didn't answer. Instead, she reached for the stack of sterilized cloths and began folding them again, more carefully this time. Otis noticed how her sleeves were rolled high, exposing her arms, still thin but stronger now. The faint glow of her violet skin shimmered under the orange light. He crossed to her, grabbed another stack of cloths, and started folding with her. The motion became wordless routine: fold, stack, press. After a while, she said, "You still haven't told me why you came down here. Not just the story they gave you. The real reason." Otis paused mid-fold. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me," she said softly. "You could have gone anywhere, but you stay in the worst part of the colony. You fix leaks that don't stay fixed. You feed people who can't pay. That's not punishment. That's choice." He exhaled slowly. "You're right. It is. So why?" He set the cloth aside, rubbed his temple. "I lost someone once. A patient. She wasn't supposed to die. I saved others, hundreds, maybe, but her case stuck. After that, I stopped believing the system was meant to heal anyone. It was meant to count them." Savy's eyes lowered. "You think you could have saved her if you'd stayed up there?" "No," he said, "but I might have forgotten her faster." Silence settled. The heat pressed heavier. She looked at him then, really looked, and saw how the corners of his eyes carried tiredness that no rest could fix. He caught her staring. "You want to know everything, don't you?" "I just want to know who I'm working beside," she said. He gave a faint nod. "Fair enough. Then here's what you should know. I came here to disappear. But you two made that impossible." Her throat tightened at that, and she looked away, hiding the flicker of emotion behind her usual composure. He stepped back toward the counter and checked the patient ledger. The words blurred from fatigue, but he forced himself to focus. "If this heat lasts, we'll have more cases by evening. Dehydration, breathing issues. Stay near the filters when people come in. I don't want Talon catching anything." "You always think ahead," she said. "I have to." She leaned her chin on her hand, watching him. "And when you don't have to anymore?" He glanced at her, confused by the question. "What do you mean?" "When the leaks stop and the patients stop coming. What happens then?" He let out a quiet laugh that didn't sound amused. "You really think that day's coming?" "I hope it does," she said. "You deserve rest." He studied her, the seriousness in her tone. "You sound older than you are." I had to be. Her eyes met his, unflinching, steady. He didn't break contact this time. The silence between them shifted, no longer empty but charged, filled with unspoken understanding. A sharp knock broke it. Otis turned instantly. The clinic door slid open partway. A young courier stood there, his clothes soaked in sweat. "Doctor," he said breathlessly. "Filter collapse in Sector G7. People choking. They sent me for help." Otis grabbed his kit from the wall. "How bad?" "Too unconscious already. Maybe more." Savy stood too, already moving toward the supply drawers. "You'll need respirators." "I know," Otis said, packing them fast. "Stay here. Keep the door sealed." "No," she said, without hesitation. "You'll need help carrying the units." "I can handle it." He stopped. "You're not trained for this." "I learned fast," she said, meeting his eyes. "You said that yourself." The moment hung between them. He wanted to refuse, but something in her tone, steady, deliberate, made him nod once. "Fine. Keep your mask tight. Don't touch anyone without gloves." Minutes later, they were outside, crossing the catwalk towards Sector G7. The air grew heavier with every step. By the time they reached the junction, the chemical smell was unmistakable. Ozone mixed with rust and burnt plastic. Inside the sector, the air filters were dead. A gray haze filled the room. A group of people lay scattered near the vents, coughing violently. Otis moved instantly. "Get them to the corner, away from the ducts," he shouted. Savy obeyed, dragging one of the smaller workers by his collar, her movements quick and precise. Sweat poured down her back, and her breathing turned shallow inside the mask. Otis injected neutralizer into the first two victims, his movements sharp and efficient. "Hold her steady," he said, and Savy gripped the woman's shoulders while he pressed the injector into her arm. The hiss of the serum filled the room. The woman gasped, chest rising. They worked in near silence for the next 20 minutes. Only coughs, the click of tools, and the dull hum of emergency lights. When the last patient's breathing stabilized, Otis leaned against the wall, pulling his mask up to wipe sweat from his face. Savy's hands were shaking. She noticed the blood smudges on her gloves. "Is it done?" "For now," Otis said, scanning the room. "But they'll need real filters. This fix won't last more than a day." He turned, catching the exhaustion in her posture. "You did well." She exhaled hard, chest rising and falling. "I didn't panic. I noticed." Back at the clinic, after cleaning up and replacing their masks, they sat in silence. Savy's hands were raw from the disinfectant, but she didn't complain. Otis poured 2 glasses of water and set one in front of her. "You shouldn't have come," he said quietly. "You'd still be there if I hadn't," she replied. He looked at her for a long moment, then shook his head slowly. "You're going to make me old faster." She smiled faintly. "You were already old." That drew a short laugh from him, real this time. He leaned back, shoulders relaxing for the first time all day. After a while, he said, "You handled yourself better than some of the recruits I trained. If you want to keep learning, I'll teach you properly." Her eyes widened slightly. "You mean it?" "I don't waste time lying," he said. "But if you do this, you do it right. You follow orders, and you don't freeze when things go bad." She nodded once. "Then teach me." He extended his hand across the counter, palm open. She looked at it, hesitant at first, then placed her smaller hand in his. His grip was firm, warm despite the chill of the air. From that moment, something shifted, unspoken but solid. That night, as Savy cleaned the tools with slow, careful precision, Otis sat at his desk, watching her movements with quiet pride he didn't let show. The girl who had once traded her hair for medicine was now part of his work, his rhythm, his life. When the lights dimmed to their night setting, he leaned back, listening to the faint sounds of her and the child breathing across the room. The exhaustion hit him like a wave, but beneath it was something steadier. Purpose. Outside, the colony was silent. Inside, 2 people and a child had turned a forgotten clinic into something almost human again. The air was cooler by the next cycle, though the colony never truly slept. The upper lights dimmed to a soft blue haze that mimicked dawn. Otis stood by the clinic window, mug in hand, watching the fog drift through the metallic walkways. His reflection looked older in that pale light. Dark stubble, sharp lines around his mouth, eyes that hadn't rested in years. But behind him, laughter cut through the silence, small and light. Savy was trying to feed Talon, who had discovered that tossing his spoon was more entertaining than eating. The baby's giggle bounced off the walls, and for the first time, Otis didn't mind the noise. It sounded like a home. Not funny, Savy murmured, trying to keep her tone stern as she fished the spoon off the floor. Do that again, and you're cleaning it yourself. He's winning, Otis said from across the room. He's learning, she countered, smirking. Otis sipped his coffee. The rich, bitter taste of Ferland seed brew grounded him. He hadn't realized how much the sound of her voice had changed. Fuller now, steady, no tremor of fear left in it. She carried herself differently too, shoulders back, eyes level. The girl who had once stood in the rain begging for a vial of medicine had grown into someone capable. He set the mug down. We'll need to restock soon. Sector G's filters won't hold through the next storm. Savy looked up. You're leaving the district again? Just the exchange hub. 2 hours, maybe less. I'm coming. You don't need to. I'm coming, she said again, firmer this time. You'll need a second pair of hands, and Talon can stay with the nurse from yesterday. Otis studied her. There was no fear in her voice, just quiet determination. Fine, he said after a pause. But stay close. The exchange hub was halfway up the tiered structure of Lystra 9, a market built between maintenance shafts where human traders and alien laborers bartered under flickering lights. Steam drifted up from broken vents, carrying the smell of metal and fried root oil. The hum of voices filled the space. Deals whispered, prices argued, lives negotiated. Savy stayed close as they moved through the crowd. Her hood was drawn low, but her yellow hair still caught glints of light. A few people glanced her way, curious, but no one said anything. Otis's presence made them keep their distance. There was something in his calm that warned against interference. He spoke briefly with a trader, exchanging a data chip for 2 crates of sterilized tubing and a sealed canister of larn leaf extract. When the man reached for more credits, Otis just looked at him, a flat, unblinking stare. The trader withdrew his hand. As they walked back, Savy finally asked, "Why do they respect you?" Otis adjusted the strap on the crate. They don't. They just know I don't bluff. You used to fight, didn't you? He gave a dry smile. Everyone fights when they've lost enough. Savy fell silent for a moment, her gaze following the thin streams of light cutting through the metal grid above. I don't like it up here, she said quietly. Too many people pretending not to see anyone else. That's why I left, he said simply. They reached the lower lift platform, its walls streaked with rust. As the old mechanism rumbled downward, Savy leaned against the rail, watching his reflection in the glass. Otis, she said softly, when you said you lost someone, was she like me? He looked at her, really looked, and saw the uncertainty hiding behind her calm expression. She was nothing like you, he said. Then, more quietly, that's why I couldn't save her. Savy held his gaze for a moment, unsure what to say. So she didn't say anything. She reached out, took the crate from his other hand, and held it as if to share the weight. He didn't stop her. By evening, the storm siren started. The entire lower district vibrated with the rhythmic pulse of pressure alarms. Otis sealed the clinic shutters while Savy gathered supplies inside. The first tremors shook dust from the ceiling. Outside, rain became metal, a torrential fall of charged particles striking the dome. Filters stable, he asked over the hum. Stable, she said, tightening a valve. For now, the noise built, deep and constant. Talon woke crying, frightened by the sound. Savy lifted him, pressing his head against her chest. Otis came closer, resting a steadying hand on her shoulder. The gesture was instinctive, unspoken. He's fine, Otis said softly. The storm will pass. She nodded, clutching the child tighter. I used to think the storms would never end, that they'd just take everything. They take what's unanchored, he said. You're not that anymore. When she looked up at him, her eyes glistened in the dim light. Not with fear, but with something warmer, steadier. She realized then how much of her strength came from the quiet man standing beside her. The storm raged for hours. They sat together near the heater, Talon asleep between them. Occasionally, Otis would adjust the temperature or check the oxygen levels, while Savy watched the rain hammer the steel walls. The rhythmic thrum felt almost like a heartbeat. After a long silence, she spoke. "When the rain stops, what happens to us?" Otis didn't answer immediately. He looked at her, at the faint shimmer of her violet skin, the tired lines near her eyes, the small smile that appeared when Talon shifted in his sleep. "You stay," he said simply. "Both of you." Her voice trembled. "You mean that? I don't say things I don't mean." She set the baby down carefully, then turned toward him. For a second, she hesitated, the distance between them full of quiet tension. Then she reached out, her hand finding his. His fingers closed around hers, firm and sure. The storm outside softened, turning from thunder to rain. "Otis," she whispered, "we're not alone anymore." He squeezed her hand gently. "No," he said, "you're not." They sat that way until the lights dimmed and the hum of the storm faded. When dawn came again, soft light bled through the window cracks, revealing a world washed clean. The air smelled of wet metal and life. Otis stood at the threshold, watching Savy cradle Talon near the window. The boy laughed at the sight of light scattering across the floor. Savy turned, smiling at Otis, not out of gratitude this time, but out of something shared, complete. In the quiet heart of Illustra 9, amid the ruins of what the world had forgotten, a doctor who once lost everything had built something unplanned and real, a family. And for the first time in years, he let himself believe the storm had finally passed.